Summer in Cornwall, you can't beat it. Millions come here every year for the sun, sand and clear waters of the Atlantic. But behind the beaches, I want to show you a very different county.
I'm John Wedgwood Clarke. I'm a Cornishman and a poet, born in Penzance and raised across the bay in the tourist hotspot of St Ives. As a teenager, I worked in the Carbis Bay Hotel where they held the G7 summit. But my story is not about the great and the powerful, but a hidden and neglected landscape.
I've been writing a poem about the Red River, a small polluted stream that powered the heart of Cornwall's mining industry, making some very rich, but at a huge cost to the river. Join me on my poetic journey into the past and present along Cornwall's Red River. As a teenager, I was fascinated by this place. I loved the red mud here, that built up where the river hits the sea at Cadreevy. Back then, the river poured red muck straight into the sea. It's clearer now, but the story of why it was like that reveals a rich side to Cornwall's past. I've been studying this legacy in my work at Exeter University, and also discovered the many people who love this river and want to protect its heritage and future. Within the crust of mud at the river's mouth, the buried sediments of a way of life. I dipped my arms in your silken slimes, hands smoking like fire in the sea. I surfed red waves filled with providence, engineers, astonishing inventions made in places unremote to themselves. It's been swept away, leaving me riddled, a local stranger nostalgic for pollution. Why my hands can still find red silt in that water is the story of this film. The river rises in the moors above Camborne and falls through landscape by turns rural and industrial. That story begins here, 7 miles from the beach, amongst the ruins of Cornwall's mining past.
This is about as close to the source of the Red River as I can get. In Cornwall, water like this is often associated with miraculous powers, but this had a much more mundane role to play. It was involved in the extraction of a very valuable commodity, tin.
Everyone's familiar with these, the ruins of the Cornish engine houses that pumped water from the mines and hauled the miners to and from the tin face. But 100 years ago, tin streaming works lined the banks of the river with ingenious equipment to extract the heavy and precious tin from the lighter waste.
And look at this place now, covered in gorse and willow herb. But back then, behind every miner underground, there were scores of workers, women and children in the case of tin processing. Water from the river, or pumped and drained from the mines, was crucial for moving the tin around and dumping what you didn't want.
I've come to King Edward Mine Museum to find out how they did it. Carol Richards explained to me how getting the tin ore out of the ground was only the start of a labour-intensive process.
Carol, what are you doing with this wonderful rhythmic machine?
Well, I'm shoveling the crushed ore onto this shaping table that is going to separate out the tin from the waste material we don't want. So the tin is on this top end here, and the waste material is towards the bottom of the table.
And what would happen to the wastewater that's flowing off the table?
Well, that would have gone into the Red River, but then been processed multiple times to recover as much tin as possible.
The river was the focus of a vast industrial complex of extraction. not simply taking tin and copper, but creating byproducts like arsenic. Of the pollutants dumped in the river, it was the iron compounds that stained the river red. Now, the upper river's a beautiful place for a bike ride. The remains of industry just visible on the horizon, the past and present inextricably linked. Not far from the river, volunteers tend the vulnerable machines. Obsolete answers their hands have weighed and taken to heart. What is it? This thing for rinsing tailings, purifying its form in the afterlife museum. In the pit of the moment, it turns and spills. A fountain in a ruined memory palace, whose granite walls are weirs of ivy. Tin created great wealth for a few. This is the monumental Wheel Basset in the Red River Valley. Waste from the Basset family mines drained into it. With its Romanesque arches, it's known as the Cathedral of the Tin area, now a World Heritage Site.
The Bassets made a fortune, spending the equivalent in today's money of £15 million on their vast stately home on the other side of the valley, well away from the dust and shattered landscape of their lucrative workings.
The river here is rampant with vegetation. As you walk along its upper reaches, it disappears from view. The banks are overgrown with gorse, alder, buddleia, you name it. When it does open up, you're getting near the heart of the Cornish tin area. South Crofty, with its almost incongruous mine headgear, was open until 1998, the last mine to close.
And this whole area, as regards a mine site.
I met John Wedgwood, who worked at South Crofty in the 70s.
There was very little safety equipment in those days or protective clothing, so on one occasion I was working in a particularly wet area, so I actually got some bin bags and cut holes in to put my head through and for my arms, and stood there when I was drilling what they call upper holes. I was being covered in red ochreous stuff. This bin bag did actually protect me from the worst of it. Bits of rock would occasionally fall on you if you weren't careful, so you kept a weather eye on everything. Your senses, you're always alert to what might be going on.
But the red stuff got everywhere.
It sort of got into your pores, and I can remember when I first met my wife, we went on holiday as such, and I made a mistake of wearing a white shirt, and of course you go somewhere warm, you sort of perspire a little bit, and then you end up with like a red stain in the places you didn't really want red stains to appear.
But when it came to the river, it seems the miners took much less care of that than their personal appearance.
I suppose we didn't care unduly because we weren't necessarily encouraged to care. It was just a fact of life.
And if you didn't dump it in the river, what would have happened to it?
Well, I asked this question to a mining engineer on one occasion. He said, well, if we took it out of the water, we'd have a great pile of iron oxide by the mine, and if the wind blew from the east, it would be in Camborne, and if it blew from the west, it'd be in Redruth. So the choice was rather obvious, put it in the river.
And this 70s picture shows just how much was pouring out. That red plume moved up and down the beach with the tide. That's what I'd surf in. By the late 1980s, tin mining in Cornwall was in trouble. The price of tin fell with cheaper global supplies. The hallowed names of my childhood, Givor, Wheeljane, and finally South Crofty, closed down one by one. Now the river above Crofty soon loses its rural feel, canalised and forced through culverts. Though at least the water is clear and you can walk next to it. But it's not long before the next insult. The A30, the main route through Cornwall. When it was built, the river was forced underground. Millions drive over it every year, unaware they are hurtling over a piece of Cornish history. You pour through the culvert, etc., etc. Our rapid wave of everlasting trash, dirty white noise, bright as a chlorinated fountain blowing into the dark under torrential traffic. Your body stained with diesel smoke, brake dust, soaked away rainbows, squalls condensed to the perpetual note you've been given to smash between walls. Here, the walker is forced away from the river, and walking over the road, all sense of rural calm is gone. But I'm not the first to track its course and its story.
So this tiny stream was once...
Back in the 80s, young landscape photographer Jem Southam launched his career with a book of colour photos, The Red River. It caught the river and industry at a crucial point of change.
I was out walking the dog one day and came across this tiny red stream flowing through a green field. And I realised that this was the new realm that I was going to explore with my camera.
Was that because of the colour of the
colour,
river?
it's extraordinary, extraordinary. Never seen anything like it.
And that suited your...
Yes, that and the
technique
Cornish
at the time?
light,
And
the
the
sort
Cornish
of
light.
flat Cornish, damp, drizzly light. This is such a rich place. The farms, the small holdings, the whole valley is just so rich in history, and a history that really kind of drew me.
Jem's photos record a slow decline when landmarks like these old settling beds disappeared. Also, the vivid topography, as a clear tributary meets the Red River. But it also marks a disappearing culture.
It's all gone. What's extraordinary, I finished photographing in 1987, and I started coming back a couple of years later. The mine had closed, the houses were being developed, the satellite dishes appearing all over the place. Within 3 or 4 years, what I'd photographed had gone.
One of my favourite pictures, big fire, hidden by a Cornish engine house at dusk.
The valley was still full of noise. Day and night, 24 hours a day, the grinding of the ore was still sort of going on. And that picture evoked something of what it must have been like for me to have been here in the 19th century.
The river was still running red into the sea in the 80s. It's clearer now, when you can see it, that is. North of the A30, following the river gets even trickier. In places, the path to it is closed, but with a new footbridge planned to improve access, maybe it's about to get some much-needed investment. Down this track, there's a surprise. The former settling beds here at Great Wheel Seaton haven't been bulldozed. They've even left a slightly wonky calciner where tin ore was roasted to extract valuable arsenic. But the legacy of mining pollution here is helping nature for once. One reason it's still here is because of the work of Steve Jones. He spent his life protecting and recording some of Britain's rarest insects, dragonflies and damselflies. He's recorded 17 different species here, including some nationally rare. These are scarce blue-tailed damselflies mating, filmed by Steve. These were once thought to be extinct in the UK, but they're doing well here. Also rare nationally, the small red damselfly, but here its numbers are increasing. Steve campaigned to preserve this rare habitat.
It's home to the scarce blue-tailed damselfly, which is a nationally scarce species, and this is one of the few places left in the UK that you can see this species.
These are all tin settling tanks, aren't they, Steve? But why this blue-green sludge over the top of the surface?
Yeah, so that's the copper content that we can see, and along with things like arsenic and the heavy metals that are in the silt and the water, that's what keeps the spread of vegetation at bay, so it prevents things like the gorse, the willow, from dominating the site, keeps it nice and open for the scarce bluetail.
So you're saying that in this instance, poison is really good for biodiversity?
Yes, definitely. It's what keeps this site pristine, where so many other sites along the valley have been lost.
It may look like wasteland, but it's one of the most biodiverse places on the river. At the sides, however, scrub and gorse are creeping in. Steve's work doesn't just protect this precious place, it celebrates it. He's a remarkable draftsman as well. Great events are happening at the edges. Pools lump up with light and spawn. A saliva of biofilm breathes the sky. Through water clear as a glass-bottomed boat, islands of bacteria rise. Bone blue corals crumbling as a hand slips in to make certain it's all not a dream of the world beginning over without us. Sink into the mess we have made. Silt on your eyes like ash on a skylight. Downstream at Roscrogan, a chance to cool my feet walking through the river for once. The water here is beautifully clear, probably as clear as it's been in centuries, but that's about to change dramatically.
This is clear water coming down from Roscrogan. And here, just a few hundred metres further on, it's joined by this, a mine adit or drain that really gives the river its name. Amazingly, half a dozen or so mines still drain into this tiny stream. Just look at this red stuff billowing out into it.
The adit spews this cloudy water into the river day in and out, 24 hours a day, and this is staining the rocks all along here. The outflow includes waste from South Crofty. When it closed in 1998, it was decided the best option was to let the flooded mine drain here. This extraordinary computer animation shows the complex web of tunnels underneath this part of Cornwall. Miles of vertical shafts, levels, and also adits draining into watercourses like the Red River.
And we're going upstream towards where the...
Keith Russ was a mining engineer at South Crofty and created that computer graphic. As part of his job, Keith used to regularly sample the waters here.
Historically, the adit was driven to drain mines under the Camborne area, and they go back to the 1700s. And when Crofty shut, their water was going to flood up to a natural drainage point. And at the time, the Environment Agency, some consultants and the mining company weren't exactly sure of which point that would be. So they thought, right, we'll engineer one, that it's under our control. So they chose a shaft about half a mile from here, and all the water that decants out of South Crofty now comes out of that adit into this one and then into the stream.
So what is this orange stuff we're looking at?
It is mainly iron compounds, and historically the Red River got its name because there was an awful lot of iron and suspended solids going down when the mines were working, and it would have looked like tomato soup.
Is there any other noxious stuff in here? Any other things in solution?
There are some heavy metals, zinc, copper, manganese, a bit of arsenic, all of which can be recovered by treatment if you needed to. But because the water is mainly abandoned, there is no actual control at the moment over what's being discharged.
This is a strange moment for me. I haven't seen the river running this red since childhood down at the beach. I never thought I'd be wading through it again.
It's one of the paradoxes of this river, that something so polluted could flow through such an extraordinary landscape. But of course the pollution is part of me, it's part of Cornwall, and it's eloquent. Deep down inside me, there's a part of me that also is fascinated and that loves this redness, because it tells me something about my identity as a Cornishman. It tells me that, yes, we've done wonderful things, but we've also done them at a great cost to our landscape.
South Crofty have got permission from the Environment Agency to discharge fully treated water into the river should the mine reopen. That will improve water quality. The pollution is already diluted by 2 brooks that join the river downstream. Pollution isn't the only problem. The river is very overgrown here, but in places things open up.
I'm at Keeve Mill, hard by the Red River. 50 years ago, this landscape would have been filled with an array of settling beds and tanks, all bulldozed now. But whether by accident or design, they left behind a landscape rich in ponds and heather, great for nature. But there's a serpent in paradise.
On a ridge above the river, this sewage works treats wastewater from this part of West Cornwall. It's an improvement on the days when I surfed. Then sewage bobbed around us in the sea. But quite regularly, excess dirty stormwater the sewage farm can't cope with is legally allowed to discharge. In 2020, there were 38 storm and sewage discharges here and another 33 from an outfall up the river. Without the storm overflow, there'd be a risk of it flooding people's homes.
You can see human hair, shreds of baby wipe, bits of old plastic trapped against the grill. The waters off the beaches of Cornwall are far cleaner than they were 35 years ago, but surfers still complain about pollution off the mouth of the Red River after heavy rain. They want it all cleaning up.
South West Water, who run the works, told us they stick to their permitted storm discharge consents, and both Gwithian and Godrevy beaches are rated as having excellent bathing water quality. I'm a mile or so downstream from the adit at a little place called Coombe. There's iron oxide here staining the rocks and smothering life on the riverbed. At Coombe, a small brook joins the main river. A team of scientists from Exeter University have been finding out about how the fish are coping. I'm helping out with some electrofishing.
Just try under that bank a bit there.
An electrode stuns the fish temporarily. It doesn't harm them. They soon revive. We are after brown trout, resilient fish.
Here you go, John. There's 4 in this one. And there they go.
What are they?
Trout. They're all trout, these.
Jamie Stevens and his team weigh and measure them and take DNA samples.
Amazing. I just can't believe that these have all come out of this small stretch of river.
They took fish here and in another polluted river, the Hale, in 2013.
I'm on my way.
Now they've come back to do more sampling, and the fish DNA testing has thrown up something remarkable.
What quickly became apparent is that the genetic profile of fish in the Red River really stands out from all the rest. It's not that kind of slow pattern of genetic differentiation. These fish are just way out there. And that made us wonder whether something about the history and the waters and the potential pollution in the waters of this region was in some way driving that genetic differentiation.
The Tahiti Brook is part of the Red River catchment. Although the brook runs clear, these fish move all around, including the more polluted Red River. Jamie tried a lab experiment to see if his hunch was right. They exposed fish from here and also from unpolluted Cornish rivers like the Foy to high levels of metal pollution.
The fish from the clean rivers quickly showed signs of distress when we put them into that cocktail of artificial kind of mine water, whereas the fish from the metal polluted rivers, they just kind of sat there. And the physiological data, the respiratory data, and ultimately the genetic data suggests that they are not just coping, but they are unfazed by that. So we think that they are actually adapted to the waters of these rivers. And that has happened within just a couple of 100 years.
So these fish have adapted to the cocktail of pollutants thrown at them. It's almost as if the Industrial Revolution is in their genes. And they've survived this little test. As the fish revive, time to put them back. The samples go back to the lab for DNA analysis. They soon swim off, unaware of their contribution to science. Further down the Red River, nature is fighting back. This is Bell Marsh, right next to the river and fed by it. It's under attack, not from mine pollution, but invasive plants like these bulrushes.
Yeah, it was just down here on the other side.
I'm with a group, the Red River Rescuers, conservation volunteers determined to improve this place and turn it into a refuge for wildlife. It's working. These bees are taking pollen from Devil's Bit scabious. The wet boggy ground, perfect for horsetail, and this long-jawed orb weaver spider. The volunteers didn't come here at all during the pandemic. That break has left a lot to do. Jo Poland helps run the group.
We haven't been here for 2 years now, and it's quite a shock to see what nature's done in that time. Lots of people think it's good having lots of trees, which it is in the right place, but here what we need is nice open spaces for wildlife to be able to thrive in the warmth and the light.
Frogs thrive in the eye of light. Slung between reeds, a spider locates an insect moment. The rescuers have farmed. A rainbow seeps from their treasuring of peat. This is hope for the future. My journey, though, is at its end, and sadly, it's a bit of a frustrating one.
It's a lovely stretch of path, getting a bit overgrown, but it's not the vegetation that's the problem. It's the fact that half a mile down there, the path comes to a dead end, and sadly, you have to turn back.
It's a pity there isn't a path all the way along the river here. For the last half mile, it's a road walk. The river has a pretty sorry end. Clogged by reeds and plants, it's almost completely hidden. But it makes a final bid for freedom and opens up to link with the sea.
I may only have walked 7.5 miles from the small stream that rises in the hills above Camborne, but it's been a journey through centuries of Cornish history, personal stories, and timeless ecology. It's not always been pretty. Sometimes the river seems traumatized by what we've done to it. But I think it's really important to take a look at these damaged places and listen to what they tell us about our attitudes towards nature, because we've all left our mark on our rivers in one way or another.